In the 1930s, American grandmothers made cakes that mattered. Their work in the kitchen didn't just fill plates. They created complete sweet desserts from vegetables and fruits that saved butter and sugar. Chocolate beet and carrot depression cake. These magic cakes might sound too simple today, but they kept families fed when sugar and butter almost ran out. Chocolate. Beet cake became the most beloved Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made every week during the 1930s. Garden beets replaced expensive butter while adding moisture families loved. The cake cost under 10 cents total. Grandmothers boiled 3 medium beets until fork tender. They peeled beets and mashed them completely smooth. They creamed 1/4 cup butter with 1 cup sugar. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They stirred and mashed beets carefully. They sifted 2 cups flour with 1/2 cup cocoa powder. They added 1 teaspoon baking soda. They folded dry ingredients into beet mixture. They poured batter into greased pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for 35 minutes. They cooled cakes completely on wire racks. The beets created incredibly moist chocolate texture. Sugar sweetened without overpowering cocoa flavor. Families never detected vegetable taste. Children asked for second slices every time. The secret was mashing beets until silky smooth. Lumpy beets ruined texture instead of creating perfect moisture. Will you try this cake this weekend? Tag someone you're baking with. Watch till the end for more cakes coming up. Carrot depression cake became the second most popular wartime dessert American grandmothers made during the 1940s. Fresh carrots replaced all butter while adding natural sweetness. The cake cost under 12 cents total. Grandmothers peeled and grated 2 cups fresh carrots finely. They mixed 1½ cups flour with 1 teaspoon baking soda. They added 1 teaspoon cinnamon and ½ teaspoon nutmeg. They whisked 1 cup sugar with 3/4 cup vegetable oil. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They stirred in grated carrots thoroughly. They folded in dry ingredients gently. They poured batter into greased pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for 40 minutes. They cooled cakes completely on wire racks. The carrots created moist, tender crumb. Oil replaced expensive butter perfectly. Spices masked any vegetable flavor completely. Families believed they were eating regular spice cake. The secret was grating carrots very finely. Chunky carrots made texture grainy instead of smooth and moist. Before we move on, many of you asked in the comments where to find these recipes. We even received tons of email too, so we published these recipes on our website. The link is in the description. Let's continue. Sweet potato layer cake became the most treasured Southern Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made for church suppers during the 1930s. Mashed sweet potatoes replaced all butter naturally. The cake cost under 15 cents total. Grandmothers boiled 2 large sweet potatoes until completely soft. They peeled and mashed potatoes until absolutely smooth. They creamed 1 cup mashed sweet potato with 1½ cup sugar. They added 3 beaten eggs, 1 at a time. They sifted 2½ cups flour with 2 teaspoons baking powder. They stirred in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. They folded dry ingredients into sweet potato mixture. They poured batter into 2 greased layer pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. They cooled layers completely on wire racks. The sweet potatoes created beautiful orange color. Natural sweetness reduced sugar needs. Texture stayed incredibly moist for days. Southern families brought these cakes to every gathering. The secret was mashing potatoes perfectly smooth. Lumps created uneven texture instead of silky cake layers. Before we move on. Date nut depression. Cake became extremely popular during wartime rationing when American grandmothers needed sugar substitutes in the 1940s. Chopped dates provided all sweetness naturally. The cake cost under 20 cents total. Grandmothers chopped 2 cups pitted dates finely. They poured 1 cup boiling water over dates. They let mixture cool completely. They creamed half-cup vegetable oil with half-cup brown sugar. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They stirred in cooled date mixture thoroughly. They sifted 2 cups flour with 1 teaspoon baking soda. They folded in 1 cup chopped walnuts. They mixed dry ingredients into date batter. They poured batter into greased pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. They cooled cakes completely on wire racks. The dates sweetened cake naturally without white sugar. Oil replaced expensive butter successfully. Walnuts added protein families desperately needed. Children loved sweet fruit flavor throughout. The secret was cooling dates completely before mixing. Hot dates melted batter instead of distributing evenly. Pumpkin spice cake became the favorite Fall Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made throughout autumn months during the 1930s. Canned pumpkin added moisture while reducing butter needs. The cake cost under 18 cents total. Grandmothers creamed half-cup shortening with 1 cup sugar. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They stirred in 1 cup canned pumpkin thoroughly. They sifted 2 cups flour with 2 teaspoons baking powder. They added 1 teaspoon cinnamon and ½ teaspoon nutmeg. They folded dry ingredients into pumpkin mixture. They poured batter into greased pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for 40 minutes. They cooled cakes completely on wire racks. The pumpkin created incredibly moist texture. Shortening cost less than butter. Warm spices made cakes taste like holidays. Farm families used home-canned pumpkin from gardens. Thanksgiving tables featured these cakes every year. The secret was using real pumpkin, not pie filling. Pie filling made cakes too sweet instead of perfectly spiced. 5. Beloved Depression-era cakes fed American families when butter and sugar disappeared during the 1930s. From chocolate beet cake to pumpkin spice cake, each recipe cost under 20 cents total. Grandmothers used vegetables and fruits to replace expensive ingredients. Which cake did your grandmother bake every Sunday? Banana depression cake became wildly popular when American grandmothers discovered overripe bananas replaced butter during the 1930s. Mashed bananas added moisture and sweetness naturally. The cake cost under 8 cents total. Grandmothers mashed 3 overripe bananas until completely smooth. They mixed 1 tablespoon melted butter with 1 cup sugar. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They stirred in mashed bananas thoroughly. They sifted 1½ cups flour with 1 teaspoon baking soda. They folded dry ingredients into banana mixture. They poured batter into greased pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for 35 minutes. They cooled cakes completely on wire racks. The bananas replaced nearly all butter successfully. Natural fruit sugars reduced white sugar needs. Texture stayed moist for 3 full days. Grocery stores gave away overripe bananas free. Families saved money while enjoying sweet cake. The secret was using very ripe spotted bananas. Firm bananas made cakes dense instead of light and fluffy. Honey substitute cake became essential when American grandmothers ran out of white sugar during wartime rationing in the 1940s. Local honey replaced all granulated sugar completely. The cake cost under 15 cents total. Grandmothers creamed 2 tablespoons butter with 3/4 cup honey. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They mixed in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. They sifted 2 cups flour with 2 teaspoons baking powder. They stirred in ½ cup milk gradually. They folded dry ingredients into honey mixture. They poured batter into greased pans. They baked cakes at 325 degrees for 40 minutes. They cooled cakes completely on wire racks. The honey sweetened cake with deep floral flavor. A minimal butter kept costs extremely low. Texture stayed moist because honey retained moisture. Farm families kept beehives specifically for honey. Local beekeepers traded honey for eggs. Ration books never limited honey supplies. The secret was reducing oven temperature for honey. High heat burned honey instead of baking evenly. Fig preserve cake became treasured when American grandmothers used homemade preserves to replace sugar during the 1930s. Sweet fig jam provided moisture and sweetness together. The cake cost under 20 cents total. Grandmothers creamed half-cup butter with half-cup sugar. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They stirred in 1 cup fig preserves thoroughly. They sifted 2 cups flour with 1 teaspoon baking soda. They added 1 teaspoon cinnamon. They folded dry ingredients into fig mixture. They poured batter into greased pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for 40 minutes. They cooled cakes completely on wire racks. The fig preserves added natural sweetness. Homemade jams cost almost nothing. Texture stayed incredibly moist for days. Southern families preserved figs every summer. Root cellars stored jars throughout winters. Church ladies traded preserve recipes constantly. The secret was using thick preserves, not thin jam. Runny jam made batter too wet instead of properly thick. Wartime reduced sugar cake became the official rationing recipe American grandmothers received from government pamphlets during the 1940s. Recipes used exactly half normal sugar amounts. The cake cost under 10 cents total. Grandmothers creamed 2 tablespoons butter with half-cup sugar. They added 1 beaten egg slowly. They mixed in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. They sifted 1½ cups flour with 2 teaspoons baking powder. They stirred in 3/4 cup milk gradually. They folded dry ingredients into sugar mixture. They poured batter into greased pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. They cooled cakes completely on wire racks. The government designed recipes for ration restrictions. Half sugar still tasted acceptably sweet. Families appreciated having any cake at all. Ration boards distributed printed recipes free. Newspapers published wartime cake recipes weekly. Every household made this exact cake. The secret was not expecting traditional sweetness. Proper expectations made reduced sugar taste perfectly fine. Hot water. Chocolate cake became extremely popular when American grandmothers discovered hot water replaced milk and most butter during the 1930s. Boiling water created surprisingly moist chocolate cake. The cake cost under 12 cents total. Grandmothers sifted 1½ cups flour with 1 cup sugar. They added 1/3 cup cocoa powder. They mixed in 1 teaspoon baking soda. They made 3 wells in dry ingredients. They poured 1 tablespoon melted butter in first well. They added 1 teaspoon vinegar in second well. They poured 1 teaspoon vanilla in third well. They poured 1 cup boiling water over everything. They stirred mixture until completely smooth. They poured batter into greased pans immediately. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. They cooled cakes completely on wire racks. The hot water activated cocoa powder fully. Minimal butter kept costs incredibly low. Vinegar reacted with soda for perfect rise. The secret was using truly boiling water. Warm water failed to activate ingredients properly. 10. Depression-era cakes transformed vegetables, fruits, and pantry staples into beloved desserts. American families ate weekly during the 1930s. From chocolate beet cake to hot water chocolate cake, every recipe cost under 20 cents. Which of these forgotten cakes will you bake this weekend? Economical chocolate cake became the most beloved Canadian Depression-era dessert American grandmothers adopted during the 1930s, when every penny mattered desperately. 1 tablespoon lard plus 1 tablespoon butter replaced normal half-cup butter amounts. The cake cost under 9 cents total, making it the cheapest chocolate cake possible. Grandmothers melted 1 tablespoon lard with 1 tablespoon butter in small pans. They let mixture cool slightly. They mixed 1 1/4 cups flour with 3/4 cup sugar in large bowls. They added 2 tablespoons cocoa powder and 1 teaspoon baking soda. They stirred in 1/4 teaspoon salt. They made 1 large well in dry ingredients. They poured melted lard mixture into well carefully. They added 3/4 cup cold water slowly. They stirred mixture until completely smooth with no lumps remaining. They poured batter into greased 8-inch pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. They baked until toothpicks inserted in centers came out completely clean. They cooled cakes in pans for 10 minutes. They turned cakes onto wire racks to cool completely. The lard created surprisingly tender crumb texture. Minimal butter kept costs extremely low. Cocoa powder provided deep chocolate flavor families craved. Canadian housewives shared this recipe across the border. American grandmothers copied it immediately. Church cookbooks printed this exact recipe throughout Depression years. Farm families always kept lard available, rendering pig fat cost absolutely nothing. The secret was cooling lard mixture before adding to flour. Hot, fat, cooked flour instead of mixing smoothly into proper batter. Hickory nut cake became the most treasured Appalachian Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made during autumn months in the 1930s, when wild hickory trees produced abundant free nuts. 2/3 cup butter seemed generous, but hickory nuts added substantial bulk, making cake feed more people. The cake cost under 25 cents total. Grandmothers creamed 2/3 cup softened butter with 2 cups white sugar until light and fluffy. They added 3 large eggs, 1 at a time, beating thoroughly after each addition. They sifted 2 1/2 cups all-purpose flour with 2 teaspoons baking powder. They stirred in 1/8 teaspoon salt. They added dry ingredients alternately with 3/4 cup whole milk. They folded in 1 1/2 cups chopped hickory nuts carefully. They poured batter into greased layer pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 35 minutes. They baked until tops turned golden brown and centers sprang back when touched lightly. They cooled cakes in pans for 15 minutes. They turned layers onto wire racks to cool completely. The hickory nuts added rich buttery flavor naturally. Wild nuts cost absolutely nothing to gather. Children climbed trees collecting nuts for grandmothers. Families spent autumn evenings cracking hickory shells together. Hard shells required hammers and patience. The nuts inside tasted sweeter than expensive store pecans. Mountain communities made these cakes for every celebration. Church ladies competed to make tallest hickory nut layer cakes. The secret was toasting nuts lightly before adding to batter. Raw nuts tasted flat, but toasted nuts released oils, creating deeper flavor throughout entire cake. Sorghum molasses cake became essential Southern Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made when white sugar disappeared completely during the 1930s. Dark sorghum syrup replaced all granulated sugar naturally. The cake cost under 10 cents total. Grandmothers creamed 1/4 cup butter with 1/2 cup brown sugar until combined. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They stirred in 3/4 cup sorghum molasses thoroughly. They sifted 2 cups flour with 1 teaspoon baking soda. They added 1 teaspoon ground ginger and 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon. They stirred in quarter teaspoon ground cloves. They alternated adding dry ingredients with 3/4 cup hot water. They mixed until batter became completely smooth. They poured batter into greased square pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 40 minutes. They baked until centers set firmly when touched gently. They cooled cakes completely in pans on wire racks. The sorghum created deep molasses flavor families loved. Dark syrup cost pennies per gallon. Southern farmers grew sorghum cane in every field. Fall sorghum making became community celebrations. Families boiled cane juice in huge outdoor kettles. Children watched syrup thicken for hours. The finished product lasted entire winters. Every household kept gallon jugs in pantries. Sorghum replaced sugar in all baking. Gingerbread flavor masked any bitterness sorghum carried. Mountain families preferred sorghum over white sugar. The rich taste reminded them of molasses cookies. The secret was using fresh sorghum, not old crystallized syrup. Old sorghum tasted bitter and harsh instead of smooth and sweet with pleasant spice notes. Condensed milk cake became ingenious Depression-era dessert. American grandmothers created when butter and sugar both ran out during the 1930s. One sweetened condensed milk replaced both ingredients simultaneously. The cake cost under 20 cents total. Grandmothers whisked one 14-ounce can sweetened condensed milk with 2 beaten eggs until smooth. They stirred in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. They sifted 2 cups all-purpose flour with 2 teaspoons baking powder. They added 1/4 teaspoon salt. They alternated folding dry ingredients with 1/2 cup water into condensed milk mixture. They mixed gently until just combined with no flour streaks remaining. They poured batter into greased 9-inch pans. They baked cakes at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for 35 minutes. They baked until golden brown and toothpicks inserted in centers came out clean. They cooled cakes in pans for 20 minutes. They turned cakes onto wire racks to cool completely. The condensed milk provided sweetness and fat together. No additional sugar was needed at all. No butter was required whatsoever. Texture stayed incredibly moist for 5 full days. Government surplus programs distributed condensed milk free to poor families. Relief agencies handed out cases monthly. Every household received several cans. Grandmothers experimented creating recipes using government commodities. This cake became most successful invention. Church potlucks featured dozens of condensed milk cakes. Everyone made slight variations. Some added cocoa powder for chocolate versions. Others folded in raisins or nuts. The secret was reducing oven temperature significantly. High heat burned milk sugars instead of baking cakes evenly throughout. Buttermilk. Substitute cake became beloved Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made when fresh milk was too expensive during the 1930s. Sour milk or buttermilk cost nothing because families saved milk that turned. The cake cost under 12 cents total. Grandmothers creamed 2 tablespoons softened butter with 1 cup white sugar until fluffy. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They mixed in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. They sifted 2 cups all-purpose flour with 1 teaspoon baking soda. They stirred in 1/2 teaspoon salt. They alternated adding dry ingredients with 1 cup buttermilk or soured milk. They mixed until batter became smooth and uniform. They poured batter into greased layer pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. They baked until centers sprang back when pressed lightly. They cooled cakes in pans for 15 minutes. They turned layers onto wire racks to cool completely. The buttermilk created incredibly tender crumb texture. Acid in sour milk reacted with baking soda, creating perfect rise. Nothing was ever wasted in Depression kitchens. Milk that turned sour became buttermilk substitute immediately. Grandmothers added 1 tablespoon vinegar to fresh milk when needed. The mixture sat 5 minutes, becoming instant buttermilk. Farm families always had excess milk available. Dairy cows produced more than families could drink fresh. Extra milk turned into butter cheese and buttermilk. Buttermilk cost absolutely nothing at all. City families bought buttermilk cheaply from dairies. The secret was not overmixing batter after adding buttermilk. Excessive stirring developed gluten, making cakes tough instead of tender and delicate. Hook 15. Depression-era cakes used vegetables, fruits, syrups, and substitutes when butter and sugar almost disappeared during the 1930s. From chocolate beet cake to buttermilk, substitute cake, every recipe cost under 25 cents total. Maple syrup cake became treasured. New England Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made when white sugar was rationed during the 1940s. Pure maple syrup replaced all granulated sugar completely. The cake cost under 30 cents total. Grandmothers creamed 2 tablespoons softened butter with half-cup maple syrup until combined. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They mixed in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. They sifted 2 cups all-purpose flour with 2 teaspoons baking powder. They added 1/4 teaspoon salt. They alternated adding dry ingredients with 3/4 cup whole milk. They mixed until batter became smooth. They poured batter into greased square pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 35 minutes. They baked until golden brown and centers set firmly. They cooled cakes completely in pans on wire racks. The maple syrup created distinctive flavor families adored. New England farms produced maple syrup every spring. Tapping sugar maple trees cost nothing but time. Families boiled sap in outdoor kettles for days. 40 gallons of sap made 1 gallon finished syrup. Every household stored syrup in glass jars. Maple replaced sugar in all cooking and baking. The golden syrup lasted entire years without spoiling. Children loved maple flavor more than plain white sugar. Pancakes, waffles, and cakes all featured maple taste. Vermont families considered maple syrup essential, not luxury. Church suppers featured maple desserts exclusively during spring. Sugar maple trees grew wild throughout forests. The secret was using grade B dark syrup, not light grade A. Light syrup tasted too delicate, but dark syrup provided robust flavor throughout cake. Apple butter cake became resourceful Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made when butter was completely gone during the 1930s. Thick apple butter replaced most butter and half sugar simultaneously. The cake cost under 15 cents total. Grandmothers creamed 1 tablespoon butter with half-cup white sugar until combined. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They stirred in 1 cup apple butter thoroughly. They mixed in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. They sifted 2 cups all-purpose flour with 1 teaspoon baking soda. They added 1 teaspoon cinnamon and half teaspoon nutmeg. They folded dry ingredients into apple butter mixture gently. They poured batter into greased square pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 40 minutes. They baked until toothpicks inserted in centers came out clean. They cooled cakes completely in pans on wire racks. The apple butter added moisture, sweetness, and spice together. Homemade apple butter cost almost nothing to make. Fall apple harvests produced bushels of free fruit. Families cooked apples slowly for hours until thick. The concentrated spread lasted entire winters. Every household kept crocks of apple butter in cellars. Spreading on bread or stirring into cakes used precious supplies economically. Apple flavor complemented warm spices beautifully. Children loved sweet apple taste throughout cake. Farm families made apple butter every autumn without fail. Church communities held apple butter making parties. Huge copper kettles simmered outdoors for full days. The secret was using very thick apple butter, not thin applesauce. Runny applesauce made batter too wet instead of properly thick and moist. cider spice cake, became favorite autumn Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made when milk was too expensive during the 1930s. Fresh apple cider replaced all milk beautifully. The cake cost under 12 cents total. Grandmothers creamed 2 tablespoons softened butter with 1 cup brown sugar until fluffy. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They mixed in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. They sifted 2 cups all-purpose flour with 1 teaspoon baking soda. They added 1 teaspoon cinnamon, ½ teaspoon nutmeg, and ¼ teaspoon ground cloves. They alternated adding dry ingredients with 1 cup fresh apple cider. They mixed until batter became smooth and fragrant. They poured batter into greased square pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 35 minutes. They baked until golden brown and centers set firmly when touched. They cooled cakes completely in pans on wire racks. The apple cider added subtle fruit flavor throughout. Fresh pressed cider cost pennies per gallon. Apple orchards gave away imperfect apples free to poor families. Cider presses operated throughout harvest seasons. Communities shared pressing equipment freely. Families made cider weekly during autumn months. The fresh juice lasted 1 week before fermenting. Hard cider was saved for adults only. Sweet cider went into cakes, cookies, and pies. Children drank cider with every meal during fall. Spices masked any fermented taste that developed. Cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves created traditional spice cake flavor. The secret was using fresh, sweet cider, not hard fermented cider. Fermented cider tasted alcoholic and sour instead of sweet and apple-flavored throughout. Coconut oil cake became innovative Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made when butter disappeared completely during wartime rationing in the 1940s. Coconut oil replaced butter while adding tropical flavor. The cake cost under 18 cents total. Grandmothers melted ½ cup coconut oil in small pans. They let oil cool to room temperature. They mixed melted coconut oil with 1 cup white sugar. They added 2 beaten eggs slowly. They stirred in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. They sifted 2 cups all-purpose flour with 2 teaspoons baking powder. They added ¼ teaspoon salt. They alternated folding dry ingredients with 3/4 cup whole milk into coconut oil mixture. They mixed until batter became smooth. They poured batter into greased round pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. They baked until golden, and centers sprang back when pressed. They cooled cakes in pans for 15 minutes. They turned cakes onto wire racks to cool completely. The coconut oil created surprisingly light texture. Tropical flavor reminded families of better times. Health food stores sold coconut oil cheaply. Some pharmacies carried it as medicine. Forward-thinking grandmothers discovered baking applications. Coconut oil stayed solid at room temperature like butter. Melting was simple and quick. No creaming was necessary at all. The oil mixed into batters smoothly. Cakes stayed moist for days without refrigeration. Tropical coconut taste made ordinary cake seem exotic. The secret was using refined coconut oil, not unrefined virgin oil. Virgin oil tasted too strongly coconut-flavored instead of subtle and pleasant throughout cake. Parsnip spice cake became surprising Depression-era dessert American grandmothers made when vegetables replaced butter during the 1930s. Grated parsnips added moisture bulk and subtle sweetness naturally. The cake cost under 10 cents total. Grandmothers peeled and grated 2 cups fresh parsnips finely. They creamed 2/3 cup butter with 1½ cups white sugar until fluffy. They added 3 beaten eggs, 1 at a time. They stirred in grated parsnips thoroughly. They sifted 2 cups all-purpose flour with 2 teaspoons baking powder. They added 1 teaspoon cinnamon, ½ teaspoon nutmeg, and ¼ teaspoon ground ginger. They folded dry ingredients into parsnip mixture gently. They poured batter into greased square pans. They baked cakes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes. They baked until toothpicks inserted in centers came out clean. They cooled cakes completely in pans on wire racks. The parsnips created incredibly moist texture that lasted days. Root vegetables cost almost nothing. Gardens produced parsnips abundantly. The winter vegetables grew sweeter after first frost. Families stored parsnips in root cellars all winter long. Grated parsnips looked identical to carrots in cake batter. Children never detected vegetable taste whatsoever. Warm spices masked any earthiness completely. The cake tasted like traditional spice cake families loved. Church ladies shared parsnip cake recipes secretly. Some families preferred parsnips over carrots for baking. The sweeter flavor required less sugar overall. The secret was grating parsnips extremely finely on smallest grater holes. Coarse grating created stringy texture instead of smooth, moist cake throughout. Depression-era cakes proved American grandmothers were genius bakers who created magic from almost nothing during the 1930s and 1940s. From economical chocolate cake to parsnip, spice cake, every recipe stretched butter and sugar impossibly far. Which of these resourceful cakes will you try first? One-egg spice cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers baked when eggs were scarce in the 1930s. One single egg stretched into a full cake for 8 people. The cake cost under 10 cents during hard times. Grandmothers creamed 1 tablespoon butter with half-cup sugar in large bowls. They beat 1 whole egg into the mixture slowly and carefully. They added 1½ cups all-purpose flour gradually while stirring constantly. They stirred in ½ teaspoon baking soda carefully to ensure even distribution. They mixed 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon into dry ingredients for warmth. They added ¼ teaspoon ground cloves for deep spicy flavor depth. They stirred in ¼ teaspoon ground nutmeg for aromatic warmth and complexity. They poured in ½ cup sour milk slowly while mixing gently. They mixed batter until just combined and smooth without lumps. They greased single 9-inch round cake pans lightly with leftover lard. They poured batter into prepared pans, evenly distributing mixture carefully throughout. They placed pans inside wood-burning stove compartments, carefully avoiding hot spots. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for proper rising. They baked for 35 minutes until golden brown and fragrant. They tested centers with clean broom straw carefully to check doneness. They cooled cakes on wire racks completely before serving to families. The 1 egg held structure perfectly without any waste at all. Minimal butter kept costs rock bottom for poor, struggling families everywhere. Sour milk replaced expensive fresh milk easily and added tangy flavor. Spices masked the lean ingredient list, beautifully creating rich, complex taste. Families loved eating warm slices after Sunday suppers together at table. Children scraped every crumb from their plates happily with eager fingers. Grandmothers served cakes plain or with homemade apple butter spread thickly. Neighbors shared recipes at church socials every month, comparing techniques and tips. The cake stayed moist for 3 days, wrapped tightly in clean cloth. Grandmothers baked this cake for birthdays, too, despite limited ingredient supplies. Farm wives traded eggs for flour with neighbors, regularly building community bonds strong. Rural families kept 1 hen exclusively for Sunday eggs and special occasions. The secret was not overmixing the lean batter at any point. Overmixing made cakes tough and dense instead of tender and light. Grandmothers whisked batter exactly 20 strokes by hand, counting each one. They knew gentle mixing kept cakes soft and tender, always without fail. This cake fed Depression families for under 10 cents per serving. Half-cup sugar cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers baked when sugar rations hit hard in the 1930s. Half-cup sugar sweetened a full cake perfectly for entire families. The cake cost under 12 cents during Depression years across America. Grandmothers creamed 2 tablespoons butter with half-cup white granulated sugar slowly. They beat 2 whole eggs into mixture slowly, one at a time. They added 2 cups all-purpose flour gradually while stirring mixture constantly throughout. They stirred in 2 teaspoons baking powder, carefully ensuring even distribution always. They mixed in 1/4 teaspoon salt for flavor balance and structure enhancement. They poured in 3/4 cup whole milk slowly while mixing gently continuously. They stirred in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract last for aromatic sweetness. They mixed batter until just smooth and combined without overmixing at all. They greased 2 8-inch round cake pans lightly with bacon grease. They poured batter into prepared pans, evenly dividing mixture carefully between both. They placed pans inside wood-burning stove compartments, carefully avoiding direct flame contact. They baked cakes at 350 degrees for even rising. They baked for 30 minutes until lightly golden and springy to touch. They tested centers with clean broom straw, carefully ensuring complete doneness throughout. They cooled cakes on wire racks completely before frosting or serving, the half-cup sugar-sweetened cakes, just enough naturally without excessive sweetness. Minimal butter kept ingredient costs extremely low always for struggling families. 2 eggs provided structure without needing 3 eggs, saving precious protein. Families loved eating plain cake with homemade jam spread thickly on top. Children enjoyed slices with cold milk after school every single afternoon. Grandmothers dusted tops with powdered sugar, sometimes for special Sunday dinners. Neighbors admired how little sugar was needed truly to create delicious cake. The cake stayed soft for 4 days, wrapped tightly in clean cloth. Grandmothers baked this cake for weekday desserts regularly throughout difficult months. Farm wives stretched sugar supplies through entire months, carefully rationing every spoonful precisely. Rural families saved sugar coupons for special occasions like birthdays and holidays. The secret was creaming butter and sugar long enough to incorporate air. Long, creaming, trapped air bubbles for light, fluffy texture, always without fail. Grandmothers creamed mixtures for 5 full minutes by hand with wooden spoons. They knew patience made cakes rise beautifully high and light every time. This cake proved sugar could be halved successfully without sacrificing quality or taste. Lard substitute cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers baked when butter disappeared from stores in the 1930s. Pure lard replaced expensive butter completely and perfectly without sacrificing texture. The cake cost under 8 cents during hardest times across rural America. Grandmothers creamed half-cup fresh rendered lard with 3/4 cup granulated sugar slowly. They beat 2 whole eggs into mixture slowly, one at a time. They added 2 cups sifted all-purpose flour gradually while stirring constantly throughout. They stirred in 2 teaspoons baking powder, carefully ensuring even distribution always. They mixed in ½ teaspoon salt for flavor balance and structure support. They poured in 2/3 cup whole milk slowly while mixing gently continuously. They stirred in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract last for aromatic depth. They mixed batter until just smooth and combined without overworking mixture. They greased 2 9-inch round cake pans lightly with more lard. They poured batter into prepared pans, evenly dividing mixture carefully between both. They placed pans inside wood-burning stove compartments, carefully avoiding hot spots always. They baked cakes at 375 degrees for proper browning. They baked for 25 minutes until golden brown and fragrant throughout. They tested centers with clean broom straw, carefully ensuring complete doneness inside. They cooled cakes on wire racks completely before frosting or serving families. The lard created incredibly tender crumb texture, always superior to shortening. Lard cost half the price of butter everywhere in stores. 2 eggs held structure perfectly without needing more, saving precious protein. Families loved eating warm cake with honey drizzle on top. Children never noticed the butter was missing completely from recipe. Grandmothers baked this cake for everyday desserts regularly throughout Depression years. Neighbors praised the light, fluffy texture every time they tasted slices. The cake stayed moist for 5 days, wrapped tightly in cloth. Grandmothers rendered their own lard from pork fat after butchering hogs. Farm wives saved bacon grease in jars, carefully storing for baking purposes. Rural families kept lard crocks in cool cellars or spring houses year-round. The secret was using fresh rendered lard, only never old rancid fat. Old lard gave cakes unpleasant off flavors, quickly ruining entire desserts. Brown sugar. Only cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers baked when white sugar vanished during the 1930s. Brown sugar replaced expensive white sugar completely and beautifully, creating rich flavor. The cake cost under 15 cents during Depression years across America. Grandmothers creamed 2 tablespoons butter with 1 cup packed brown sugar slowly. They beat 2 whole eggs into mixture slowly, one at a time. They added 2 cups all-purpose flour gradually while stirring mixture constantly throughout. They stirred in 1 teaspoon baking soda, carefully ensuring even distribution always. They mixed in ½ teaspoon salt for flavor balance and structure support. They poured in 1 cup buttermilk slowly while stirring gently and continuously. They stirred in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract last for aromatic sweetness. They mixed batter until just smooth and combined without overworking mixture. They greased 1 9 by 13-inch cake pan lightly with bacon grease or lard. They poured batter into prepared pan, evenly spreading mixture to corners carefully. They placed pan inside wood-burning stove compartment, carefully avoiding direct flame contact. They baked cake at 350 degrees for even rising. They baked for 35 minutes until center set and springy to touch. They tested center with clean broom straw, carefully ensuring complete doneness throughout. They cooled cake in pan on wire rack before serving to families. The brown sugar gave deep caramel molasses flavor throughout every bite. Minimal butter kept costs extremely low for struggling families everywhere. Buttermilk activated baking soda for perfect rise, creating light, tender crumb. Families loved eating warm slices with whipped cream on top. Children scraped pans clean with their fingers, happily licking every crumb. Grandmothers baked this cake for church suppers regularly, bringing joy to community. Neighbors begged for the secret recipe every time they tasted slices. The cake stayed moist for 6 days, wrapped tightly in cloth. Grandmothers stored brown sugar in sealed jars, carefully preventing hardening or moisture. Farm wives bought brown sugar in bulk when possible, saving money always. Rural families preferred brown sugar's rich flavor anyway over white granulated sugar. The secret was packing brown sugar firmly when measuring every single time. Vinegar depression. Cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers baked when butter and eggs disappeared in the 1930s. White vinegar replaced eggs and created perfect rise through chemical reaction. The cake cost under 10 cents during hardest times across America. Grandmothers mixed 1½ cups all-purpose flour into large mixing bowls carefully. They stirred in 1 cup white granulated sugar, distributing evenly throughout flour. They added 3 tablespoons cocoa powder for chocolate flavor and dark color. They mixed in 1 teaspoon baking soda, carefully ensuring even distribution always. They added 1/4 teaspoon salt for flavor balance and structure enhancement. They made 3 wells in dry mixture carefully, using back of spoon. They poured 5 tablespoons vegetable oil into first well carefully without spilling. They poured 1 tablespoon white vinegar into second well, avoiding splashing mixture. They poured 1 teaspoon vanilla extract into third well for aromatic sweetness. They poured 1 cup cold water over everything slowly while watching carefully. They stirred batter until just smooth and combined without overmixing at all. They poured batter into ungreased 8-inch square pan, distributing evenly throughout. They placed pan inside wood-burning stove compartment, carefully avoiding hot spots always. They baked cake at 350 degrees for proper rising. They baked for 30 minutes until toothpick came clean from center. They cooled cake completely in pan on rack before cutting into squares. The vinegar reacted with baking soda for lift, creating light texture. No butter meant cakes cost almost nothing, truly feeding families cheaply. No eggs meant families saved precious protein sources for main meals. Families loved eating chocolate cake made from nothing but pantry staples. Children never guessed vinegar was the secret ingredient creating magical rise. Grandmothers baked this cake weekly during Depression years for Sunday desserts. Neighbors called it magic cake at church socials, praising incredible texture. The cake stayed moist for 4 days at room temperature, wrapped in cloth. Grandmothers used apple cider vinegar when white vinegar ran out completely. 25 cakes from nearly nothing. Grandmothers stretched 1 egg, half-cup sugar, and lard into full desserts. They used vinegar for rise when eggs vanished. Brown sugar replaced white sugar beautifully. Which Depression cake will you bake this weekend? Keep going. 5 more incredible cakes are coming next. Stovetop griddle cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers made when wood-burning stoves broke during the 1930s. No stove compartment was needed at all, ever, for baking process. The cake cost under 12 cents during Depression years across rural America. Grandmothers mixed 1½ cups all-purpose flour into large mixing bowls carefully. They stirred in half-cup white granulated sugar, distributing evenly throughout flour mixture. They added 2 teaspoons baking powder, carefully ensuring even distribution for proper rising. They mixed in 1/4 teaspoon salt for flavor balance and structure support. They beat 1 whole egg in separate bowl until smooth and yellow. They poured in 3/4 cup whole milk slowly while whisking continuously gently. They melted 1 tablespoon butter in small pan on stovetop burner. They stirred melted butter into wet mixture, slowly incorporating completely throughout liquid. They poured wet ingredients into dry ingredients gradually while stirring gently, constantly. They stirred batter until just combined and smooth without lumps forming. They heated cast iron griddle on stovetop burner slowly to proper cooking temperature. They greased griddle surface with bacon grease, lightly preventing sticking during cooking. They poured batter into round cake shape, carefully forming even circle. They covered griddle with heavy lid, tightly, always trapping heat inside completely. They cooked cake on low heat for 15 minutes without peaking. They flipped cake carefully with wide spatula once bottom browned perfectly. They cooked second side for 10 minutes more until fully cooked. They slid finished cake onto cooling plate gently, using spatula carefully. The stovetop method saved precious firewood for cooking main meals instead. No stove compartment meant no oven heat, wasted heating entire house. 1 tablespoon butter kept costs rock bottom always for struggling families. Ration book cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers baked when government rations controlled ingredients in the 1930s. 1 tablespoon butter and half-cup sugar fit ration limits, perfectly allowed. The cake cost under 15 cents during wartime years across entire nation. Grandmothers creamed 1 tablespoon butter with half-cup white granulated sugar slowly. They beat 1 whole egg into mixture, carefully incorporating air throughout. They added 1½ cups all-purpose flour gradually while stirring constantly, gently. They stirred in 1½ teaspoons baking powder, carefully ensuring distribution for rising. They mixed in 1/4 teaspoon salt for flavor balance and structure enhancement. They poured in 2/3 cup whole milk slowly while mixing continuously, gently. They stirred in 1 teaspoon vanilla extract last for aromatic sweetness. They mixed batter until just smooth and combined without overworking mixture. They greased 1 8-inch square cake pan lightly with saved bacon grease. They poured batter into prepared pan evenly, spreading to corners carefully. They placed pan inside wood-burning stove compartment, carefully avoiding hot flame spots. They baked cake at 350 degrees for even rising. They baked for 30 minutes until lightly golden and springy to touch. They tested center with clean broom straw, carefully ensuring complete doneness throughout. Poverty spice cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers baked when money vanished completely during the 1930s. 2 tablespoons butter and molasses replaced expensive sugar entirely in recipe. The cake cost under 8 cents during poorest times across rural America. Grandmothers melted 2 tablespoons butter in large pot on stovetop burner. They stirred in half-cup blackstrap molasses slowly until smooth and combined. They added 1 cup cold water gradually while stirring constantly, preventing lumps. They brought mixture to rolling boil on stovetop, watching carefully continuously. They removed pot from heat immediately after boiling to prevent burning. They let mixture cool to lukewarm temperature, carefully testing with fingertip. They stirred in 1½ cups all-purpose flour gradually while mixing constantly. They added 1 teaspoon baking soda carefully while stirring, ensuring distribution throughout. They mixed in 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon for warmth and aromatic flavor. They added ½ teaspoon ground ginger for spice depth and complexity always. They stirred in 1/4 teaspoon ground cloves for richness and deep flavor. They mixed batter until just smooth and combined without overmixing at all. They greased 1 9-inch square cake pan lightly with saved lard. Makeshift cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers baked when ingredient supplies changed daily during the 1930s. Whatever sweetener was available worked perfectly in this flexible, adaptable recipe. The cake cost between 10 and 20 cents, depending on available ingredients. Grandmothers gathered whatever they had in pantries, carefully assessing supplies before starting. They creamed 1 tablespoon butter with any available sweetener they had on hand. They used corn syrup, honey, molasses, or sugar interchangeably depending on availability. They beat 1 whole egg into mixture, slowly incorporating air throughout. They added 1½ cups all-purpose flour gradually, while stirring constantly, gently. They stirred in 1 teaspoon baking powder, carefully ensuring even distribution always. They mixed in ½ teaspoon baking soda for lift and proper rising. They added 1/4 teaspoon salt for flavor balance and structure support always. They poured in 2/3 cup soured milk slowly, while mixing continuously, gently. They stirred in 1 teaspoon vanilla if available for aromatic sweetness. They mixed batter until just smooth and combined without overworking mixture. They greased 1 8-inch square cake pan lightly with whatever fat available. They poured batter into prepared pan, evenly spreading to corners carefully. They placed pan inside wood-burning stove compartment, carefully avoiding hot spots always. They baked cake at 350 degrees for even rising. They baked for 30 minutes until center set and springy to touch. They tested center with clean broom straw. Boiled syrup cake became the most beloved cake American grandmothers baked when butter vanished and sugar nearly disappeared during the 1930s. Boiling syrup with spices created incredible flavor depth throughout entire cake. The cake cost under 12 cents during Depression years across rural America. Grandmothers poured 1 cup dark corn syrup into large pot carefully. They added 1 cup cold water slowly while stirring constantly, preventing splashing. They stirred in 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon for warmth and aromatic flavor. They added ½ teaspoon ground cloves for depth, richness, and complexity always. They brought mixture to rolling boil on stovetop, watching carefully, continuously. They boiled syrup mixture for 5 full minutes, timing with clock precisely. They removed pot from heat immediately after boiling to prevent burning. These 30 forgotten cakes fed America through its darkest decade. Grandmothers turned nothing into something beautiful every single day. Your grandmother knew these secrets once upon a time. Her hands mixed batters in worn wooden bowls faithfully. Her wood-burning stove baked miracles from mere pantry scraps. Now you hold her wisdom in your hands today. Pick 1 forgotten cake from this list right now. Gather your simple ingredients from your pantry shelves tonight.